Hi, welcome back to ABC News and our live coverage of the Democratic National Convention right here at the United Center in Chicago. Representative Maxwell Frost made history when he was the first Gen Z member elected to Congress, and he's been very open about what it took to get to this point. He faced financial difficulties, forcing him to actually drive an Uber during his congressional run. He struggled to find affordable housing and even pay off his student loan debt. Now, as a lawmaker, he fights for housing affordability and accessibility, and he says that those are some top priorities among young people right now as we head into November. Representative Maxwell Frost here on set, your first DNC.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Probably not your first interview, though.
Not my first interview.
Okay.
Well, one of my first interviews at the DNC.
Okay, well, there you go. That works for me. Yeah, I guess that's what I meant. Right, it should have been more clear. How about Patti LaBelle? What a way to kick things off.
Oh, yeah, I know. I was just listening while I was waiting for this interview.
Well, what does it feel like to be here? I mean, this is your first convention as a lawmaker.
Yeah, honestly, it really didn't hit me until yesterday when I walked into this hall, right, into this arena. Because, you know, throughout the day, you're going hotels, going to events, going to the caucus events, which are amazing. But once you walk in here and you see this and you see it full with people from across the entire country that want to elect Kamala Harris as the next president and elect Democrats up and down the ballot, I mean, it is exciting. So I'm just lucky to be here, happy to be here, right? Like, I'm just honored to be here.
Well, I definitely know how you feel. But let's talk about, you know, just as the first Gen Z member of Congress, your generation, are they excited about Kamala Harris? Are they excited about the sudden change and how this is moving so quickly? I mean, what is it that's getting them jazzed right now? And do they want to hear more?
Yeah. Well, obviously, you know, don't speak for the whole generation, but what the numbers show...
You're pretty plugged in, Maxwell.
What the numbers show us, and even I travel a lot around the country for the campaign, young people are excited about Kamala Harris. And I think it's for many different reasons. Number one, it's her authenticity. You know, she's been going viral on TikTok and online, Twitter, and everywhere all the time. And a lot of it is content that has to do with her as a human, her as a person, the things she loves, who she is, things she says. And a lot of times that pulls people in who might not care about politics, right? Because you can get really cynical looking at politics, not understanding that, you know, government can actually do things for you. So then they become attached to someone like Kamala Harris because of her authenticity, because of who she is, and then they hear her message. And then they see themselves represented in her and what she's fighting for and all the amazing people that we have here today. So it's really exciting. Young people are excited. Now our job is to take that excitement and translate it into votes, into actions, into knocking doors. And that's what I'm doing, traveling the country, and all of us are going to do right after the DNC and during it.
So I'm curious, how do you get your news? And I'm asking you this because, you know, us older folks, we get frustrated with the younger generation because we feel like they get their news off TikTok, off Instagram, off social media.
Yeah.
And they don't always take a deep dive into the issues and really understand politics. How do you feel? I mean, even the fact that there's a pilot program here letting credentialing creators, right, content creators and influencers. Are we misunderstanding the younger generation, or do you think they do need to maybe read an actual newspaper, which some still exist, you know, from time to time?
Well, you know, I always think it's important for people to do their due diligence, look into things themselves, and not just believe things from one source, but obviously multiple sources. But we do live in an era where people are consuming things in snackable portions, right? Bite-sized information, and I think that it's not just true for young people; it's true for all people. I mean, you know, many Americans are on TikTok and all these different things, and watching Instagram Reels and all that. But I do think it's important for people to still do deep dives into issues, watch shows like this, right, to hear from people and hear from the politicians and leaders directly about what they're doing. And so I think both are important, both are prevalent in this time and age, and we just got to make sure people are, again, not just paying attention to one source, but multiple.
Because snack news can be dangerous. I mean, if you even look at all the protests that happen at all the universities and colleges around the country and interviews with a lot of these students, they didn't even really understand the history of Israel and the Palestinians and the ongoing conflict. It was that snack news, the bite-sized pieces of news they were getting that created so much. I mean, it became very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I was one of the people at the front lines of the Black Lives Matter protests in Orlando. That's something I always told the organizers, and something we always push for, is the fact that we had a very important responsibility as organizers to make sure that we're saying the things that are the right things to say, because there's going to be thousands of young people who have never been in politics in their life show up to the Black Lives Matter protests and look at us as the organizers. We'll repeat the things we say, the things we chant, listen to what we're saying and say, that is what it means to be in solidarity with Black Americans in this country. And so organizers have an important responsibility as they're planning demonstrations and protests to keep that in mind as well. And so, but young people going online and seeing families, children being killed, innocent people, it pushes you out to go do something. And so even though, yes, I disagree with some of the things that have been said at these protests, it honestly reaffirms my belief in this generation that when they see something they believe is wrong,
they want to be the change.
They want to go out there and do something about it.
They want to be a part of something.
Exactly. And I think that's amazing. And if we disagree with some things that are said, I think we pull people in, not push them away, and talk with them about it.
So let me ask you this. You're the youngest member of Congress, and you're excited, and you come across so authentic. You are very different from other politicians, much older than you are. And so how are you going to keep your authenticity? Because, that's even the conversation about Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Bill de Blasio, the former New York mayor and presidential candidate, was saying she could never be her authentic self. She had to be what the party wanted her to be. She had to be what Joe Biden wanted her to be. And now you're actually seeing the real Kamala Harris. How are you going to stay real? How are you going to stay authentic to yourself? You were driving an Uber. You were struggling to pay the bills. How are you going to avoid being influenced by, look, politics can be corrupt, a lot of pressure.
Of course.
People change.
Well, the first thing I'd say is, just to push back a little bit, I think that President Biden did allow and let the vice president be her authentic self. A lot of these pieces of content that are going viral that young people are liking of the vice president and being her authentic self are content from her being the vice president over the last 3.5 years, Joe Biden's vice president. And so I think she's had the ability to do that. And now, you're right, it's a different level, though, of her being able to stake her claim and create her legacy. And that's really incredible, and we're excited about it. For me personally, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was sworn in, or when I won my election, you get that letter saying you got to be in D.C. this Sunday for orientation. I go up, I won, I'm doing all these interviews, and life was just crazy, right? Or wild, doing a million things. I go to orientation, I come home I think it was a Friday or Saturday, and I felt like I was gone for months, but it was only 7 days. I walk into my living room, I open the door, and I look up, and I'm taken aback because I kind of forgot what my own living room looked like.
Wow.
And in that moment, I said, this is how it happens, right? This is how you start to lose little pieces of yourself. And so that day I said, I know I'm not perfect, and I need to set accountability measures for myself to make sure I never lose sight of who I am or what my living room looks like or the people I'm serving. And so I do that in the staff I hire, right? I have a lot of people from my community, people I've worked with in movement that work for me on my staff and keep me grounded. We're always communicating with movements on the ground. We're always working with our local politicians, local organizers, and activists. And they're not afraid to tell me if I need to pay attention to something and vice versa. And that relationship and setting those accountability measures are important. It's not about saying I'm perfect and I'm never going to lose myself, but it's about saying I know I can slip in that, but I got to set proactively things in place so I can hold myself accountable and so others can hold me accountable, because sometimes politicians, you can be in that bubble, right? And you got to get through 1 million people to get to you, and which that's important for scheduling and stuff like that. But having that open communication with some people really can help keep you grounded. And so that's what I've done. I've set those methods of accountability, and they've been working, and we're going to continue to do that.
So my kids are going to be voting for you for president in, about 10 years?
Running for Congress was the hardest thing I've ever done. I couldn't imagine running for anything else.
It was such a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You,
Thank
Maxwell.
you.
All right.